Digimon Liberator, Debug Novel 4.1. Abundant nature, neat rows of buildings, and pleasant sunlight shining through the gaps. This is Emerald Coast, the invasive forest city. Taking its name from the sheer volume of vegetation, virtually a sea of greenery, this area today welcomes two visitors, a woman and a Digimon, who have traveled here through a portal. The woman is dressed casually in jeans, but her long legs and attractive, well-proportioned face catch the eye. Although her outfit lends her a mature look, she gives off a gentle and friendly impression, with faint eyeliner and curly long hair dyed jade green, a perfect match for her surroundings. Her name is Suzune Kazuki. Her style is neither showy nor flashy, but something about her refined appearance implies that she is no ordinary person. By her side stands Frigimon, a Digimon with a plain and simple appearance. They say a name often matches nature, and Frigimon's bear-like ears and snowman's body do give a frigid impression. But what really catches the eye is its size. Suzune was not especially short, but Frigimon was 3 times the size of her. Individual Digimon can vary, it's true, but few Frigimon were this big. Testifying to this, almost all the players passing by would stop for a moment to give them, well, mostly Frigimon, a curious look. "Yep, you sure do stand out," said Suzune. "That's why I asked if I ought to stay in your D-storage," replied Frigimon. "Who said it's a bad thing? Isn't it kinda cool being the center of attention?" "You really are a show-off, aren't you, Suzune? I don't understand you rich people." When Frigimon pointed this out, Suzune lightly brushed her hair back with her left hand, and the ring on her finger glinted in the light. "I mean, my husband's the one with the money, not me. But I guess I can't deny that I like attention. You don't exactly hate it either, though, right?" "I suppose you're right, hee." Drawn in by Frigimon's laugh, Suzune laughed too, her eyes narrowing into little curves. "I don't think I should be acting like this at my age," she said. "You're not old enough to say things like that," said Frigimon. Though already married, she was still only 25. The reminder that her youth wasn't yet over gave her comfort. Now then, enough of indulging in all the attention. Time to get to work. Unknown to the surrounding players, Suzune Kazuki was a member of a team that supports the game from behind the scenes. The Debug team. Digimon Liberator Side Story Debug 4.1. Suzune Kazuki. "Okay, Frigimon, can I get your help now?" Now that they were at the edge of town, away from the hustle and bustle, Suzune made her usual request while rubbing her ankle. Without a word, Frigimon lifted her up onto its left shoulder and started walking slowly. "Thanks." It wasn't that her feet hurt or she was tired. This was a metaverse environment, after all. It didn't track fatigue or provide physical tiredness feedback. But the young woman liked the view from up on Frigimon's shoulder. Compared to the usual ground level banality, it put a whole different perspective on things. And even if she fell, there was no need to worry about getting injured. She asked Frigimon for a ride whenever they went investigating, simply for the joy of it. But it had its benefits too. Frigimon's long legs also enabled them to cover a lot more distance when on the hunt. "Hey." Frigimon's giant face turned towards Suzune as she dangled her legs from its shoulders, swinging them back and forth and admiring the view. "I meant to ask you before. Do you act this spoiled with everyone?" No way. If I let others see this side of me, they'd look down on me, wouldn't they? I'm only like this in front of my husband and you, Frigimon. Oh, and my mom back home, replied Suzune. Well, don't you have it good? In fact, Suzune felt so comfortable and relaxed around her Digimon partner that it was almost like being back at her family home. Part of that was down to Frigimon's personality, but equally, something about Frigimon's huge size made Suzune want to act childish and helpless. How many times had she thought about ordering a giant cushion shaped like Frigimon since she started this job? Her husband's salary was nothing to sneeze at. You could safely say they were wealthy. But Suzune had decided she wanted to contribute some income of her own. She wanted to work while still able, so that no matter what happened, they would always be okay. The job had its stressful moments for sure, but having the ever-understanding Frigimon as her partner helped to no end. So, what was the mission again? Search this area for stray Digimon, wasn't it? Suzune gave her partner a small nod. That's right, said Suzune. A little while ago, there was a report of a regular player fighting off an NPC that had gone rogue. Suzune was referring to the recent appearance of rampaging NPCs around Emerald Coast. Fortunately, it wasn't yet public knowledge, but with an ordinary player defeating a rogue NPC, a new problem has arisen. So, in other words, the Digimon that player defeated is now on the loose, right? Frigimon concluded. Recent investigations had confirmed that wild Digimon were invading the bodies of NPCs and causing them to go berserk. So, as Frigimon had said, the wild Digimon that had taken over an NPC before going on the rampage was now back on the loose in Lacuna. Without a card's protection, any Digimon that remained in a Lacuna environment it wasn't adapted to would vanish before long. At least that was what the debuggers and the rest of the admin team believed. That's why dealing with a rogue NPC should have been a task for the debug team. After taking the NPC down, the Digimon ought to have been promptly captured and secured. The plan was then to send it to the garden. Unfortunately, things had become complicated. And the blame lay squarely with the GMs and the debug team for failing to manage the situation. But that fight between the player and the rogue NPC was some time ago, wasn't it? Said Frigimon. The chances of us finding it now aren't great. Indeed, the amount of time a wild Digimon could move through Lacuna was limited to a few hours, a few days at the most. Most likely, the chance to secure it had passed. But we should still be able to make it, said Suzune. How do you know that? For two reasons, Suzune continued. There was no hint of bluster behind her quick and confident declaration. Reason number one, Suzune raised the index finger of her right hand. We have eyewitness accounts. Other players who saw the fight with the rogue NPC reported it to the GMs. The logs include mentions of a Digimon running off without a human companion within the Emerald Coast area. Players unaware of the true situation had reported it is a graphical bug. A description of the Digimon matched the type that had invaded the NPC and caused it to go rogue. Reason number two, Suzune raised a second finger. Apparently, a Digimon that has hacked into an NPC can survive longer in Lacuna than one that hasn't. Wild Digimon invade the bodies of NPCs because of their survival instincts. They use the body of the NPC as a kind of protective suit, but at the cost of losing their sense of self, causing them to go berserk. Once they've lost all that protection, their instinct is to search for a new place to hide. After infiltrating a host, the Digimon becomes aware that possessing an NPC would cause it to go berserk, and gains a small amount of environmental resistance. So, when they regain their sense of self with this new knowledge, the Digimon doesn't make the same mistake twice, explained Suzune. We've confirmed that such a Digimon with increased environmental resistances also has an enhanced hacking ability. It seems they then hide inside objects within the game world instead. You mean like grass, trees and whatnot? asked Frigimon. Right, said Susanne. It was a very recent discovery. Somebody had entered a dense thicket of bamboo at the edge of the Emerald Coast region and discovered a wild Digimon hiding inside. Saying it felt silly, Digimon hiding inside inanimate objects, but after this discovery, there was undeniable evidence that it was possible. Well, Susanne continued, they can hide, but not forever. It allows them to survive for a few more months, though. Compared to hiding an NPC's body, where they can at least move about, being locked inside an inanimate object must feel extremely uncomfortable for a Digimon. Yes, it extended their lifespan, but they could do nothing but sit there until their data faded away. But Susanne believed there was still time. Based on the fact we may still have a chance to find the escaped Blukumon, as long as it's hopping from one object to another, said Susanne. Oh. Heartened, Frigimon gave out its usual, slightly languid laugh. They found the Blukumon soon after. It was only a few hundred meters away, as the crow flies, from where it had originally been spotted. Susanne and Frigimon spotted it hiding in an area of dense vegetation, collapsed with its hand outstretched, probably after trying to enter into a game object. From the short distance it was able to travel, it seemed like this Blukumon didn't have much time left. Thank goodness, sighed Susanne. Indeed, agreed Frigimon. They both have a sigh of relief, and Susanne jumped down from Frigimon's shoulder. She then immediately set a blank card in her D-storage to provide the needed protection. Blank card, stand by. Naval emblem on. Digimon capture, execute. The screen of her D-storage lit up with an intense glow. The light enveloped the Digimon, and just a few months later, the previously blank card now showed an image of Blukumon on the front. Now, all she needed to do was transfer it to the garden, and the mission would be complete. Ah! At the very moment she extended her finger to confirm the transfer, Susanne heard a shrill cry behind her. Even without looking, she could tell it was a young girl's voice. It wasn't a voice she had heard before, so it couldn't be a teammate. Upon turning around, her suspicions were confirmed. A young girl with short hair was standing there, dressed in a school uniform with a blazer. A high school girl. No, maybe even a middle schooler. And at her side was a level 3 Digimon. Devimon. Susanne was confident that she had memorized all the names and faces of the Debug team's members. There were some still in elementary school, even, but none who had a Devimon as a companion. Hold up! Shouted the girl. Don't interrupt our quest! Yeah, shouted the Devimon. We found that Blukumon before you did! I was just about to capture it for myself, cried the girl. Cutting in line when somebody else is on a quest is no fair. Ain't that right, Reina? That's right. Give it back. The girl called Reina and the Devimon rattled on without a pause. The clamor they were making made Susanne's temples hurt a little. Still, she had spent enough time with Yuki and the others to be used to this much. It was just mild discomfort at this time, not a splitting headache. Excuse me, said Susanne. I'm sorry, but maybe you could explain to me what you mean by quest. She tried her best to remain calm. She was less concerned by the pair's boisterous mood, and more concerned with that disconcerting word that they'd used. First, she had to get some more information out of them. Tch, hissed Reina. These casuals who only log in once in a while no longer have fun for the game. Reina, listen. She's probably a busy businesswoman climbing the career ladder, looking for a breather between long days at the office, reasoned Devimon. She has that kind of air about her. She's not gonna love the game as much as you. Okay. A businesswoman climbing the career ladder, said Rena. That's so cool! Thank you for all your hard work that you put in every day. Besides, this quest isn't public. It's still in testing, Devimon reminded her. Remember what it said in the pop-up message? It's probably just a coincidence they're here. I think it'd be best to negotiate this peacefully. You may be right, Rena considered. Okay, let's negotiate, Miss Haggard hard worker. You two don't know the meaning of manners, do you? Said Susanne. Although I'm not entirely sure if I'm being insulted or complimented. The pair were proving to be more difficult than they looked. But even confronted with such impoliteness, Susanne resolved to maintain a professional air. She tried to collect herself. The girl and her Digimon were looking to negotiate. They probably want her to hand over the Blukomon card. But negotiations aside, Susanne needed to know more about that quest. That's where she needed to move the conversation. This quest of yours, Susanne began. Were you asked to capture this Blukomon? What do you think, Devi? Asked Rena. Shall we tell her? If you want somebody to show their cards, you need to reveal something of your own first, Devimon advised. That's the basic rule of negotiating, Rena. I see, said the girl. Yes, what he said. My mission was to capture the wild Blukomon. A little honesty goes a long way. Add that to the girl's age and charm, and Susanne found her heart softening a little, just as Devimon predicted. But the situation was serious. This was no time for cute games. Say, Susanne, said Frigimon, don't you think... Yes, agreed Susanne. Quite right. The two exchanged a glance. Something definitely wasn't right. As mentioned earlier, the presence of wild Digimon within Digimon Liberator was not public knowledge. Most of the players who had encountered them had dismissed them as graphical bugs, and that was the end of it. And securing wild Digimon, or put another way, capturing them, was a task for the Debug team, and the details were kept strictly confidential. But Rena had used those exact words. That she was there to capture a wild Blukomon. Rena, wasn't it? Susanne asked. How exactly were you going to capture this Digimon? I was going to use this, Rena said. It was added to my inventory when I accepted the quest on the Initiate the Quest screen. She held out a blank card that closely resembled the one Susanne had just used to secure the Blukomon. But there was one clear difference from the blank cards that Susanne was used to. The girl's card was black. Susanne had never seen or heard of such an item. Also, if she was telling the truth, someone with admin access must have personally assigned her to the quest. Oh, and check this out. Once I clear the quest, I'll be rewarded with a ton of alt art chips. I wanted to keep them all for myself, but what do you say to an even split? The alt art chips that Rena was talking about are, in short, consumable items that let you increase the rarity of cards. It isn't hard to get your hands on a couple of chips, but there aren't that many floating around, and a high number are required to actually be useful in-game. That makes them a pretty effective bargaining chip. Susanne could clearly see the bait. She didn't feel it was a trap set by Rena. More likely whoever had issued the quest in the first place was behind it. Alt chips were definitely a good way to reel in a normal player to do your bidding. Susanne's suspicion was rising by the second. A black blank card, a huge reward of alt art chips, an ominous vision of somebody infiltrating the admin team and pulling strings from the shadows arose in Susanne's mind. Who could it be? What was their goal? Rena, this is a negotiation. right? Asked Suzanne. Sure is, said Rena. Shall we seal the deal? Don't be in such a hurry, said Suzanne. If we're negotiating, then let me lay out some conditions as well. Suzanne had been thinking of the mission as just another typical debug team job. But now, a keen, but clueless, player had entered the picture, seemingly being manipulated from the shadows. It had come completely out of nowhere, but she now realized the gravity of the situation for the admin team. Let's do it, Suzanne, said Frigimon. Yep, time to root this corruption out of the source. And with that, Suzanne took out her D-Storage and pointed it directly at Rena. Let's battle, Rena, said Suzanne. If you win, I'll give you this card for free. This time, it was Suzanne who spoke without a pause, not leaving Rena and Davy Devimon a chance to interrupt. But if I win, I'll have you join me for tea. To be continued.